Hello everybody, this is Austin Greathouse with CALI, and welcome to our A2J Author webinar, which will be hosted by John Mayer, our Executive Director. Now I just wanted to remind everybody how to keep up with these webinars because we do them every week. You can follow our blog at cali.org/blog. We also have a Twitter feed and a Facebook page, both of which you can find updates and announcements about these webinars each week. And we're going to be recording this, calivideos.blip.tv, and also all the archives of past webinars will be up there as well. Again, every Friday at 3. Next Friday we're going to have Rich McHugh of the University of Victoria, Canada. He's going to show us how he created some surveys with Google Docs, which is going to be really interesting. Throughout this webinar, you can ask questions, raise your hand, or use the chat function. If everybody can just, if you can hear me, raise your hand right now. We have a little button on the toolbar that you should be able to see. All right, I see some hands going up. Yeah, and when you do that, I will call on you and unmute you, and you can ask your question, or you can just shoot me a question in the question function or chat function, and I will relay it to John. And I'm going to hand it over to John now. John, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let me switch to your screen.
All right, show my screen. I'm finding all the right buttons.
Yep, we see it.
So you can hear me, Austin?
Yep, I can see your screen too.
Good. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is John Mayer. I am the Executive Director of CALI, the Center for Computer-Assisted Legal Instruction. 30 minutes isn't enough to talk about the depth and breadth of the A2J Author project and all that it entails. But I should be able to give you a pretty good overview, and I'm actually going to quickly dive into a demo because I think you learn best about this software by actually seeing it in action. I've started out with a screen that's actually on the a screen capture from the website a2jauthor.org, where you can find out all sorts of information about A2J Author. Maybe I should emphasize the point that A2J Author is software that is written by CALI, and so therefore it's available to our membership, which is to say faculty, staff, and students at all of our CALI member schools, for free. So the question is, well, what would you want to do with it? Well, before you know what you want to do with it, you have to know what it does. And for that, I have to start with a form. So, and actually, I'm going to jump over to a browser to show you where this form came from. So here I am at the California Court Info website, and what I'm basically starting is introducing you to the problem that A2J Author attempts to solve. So most people's interaction with the courts is through forms. Inevitably, you have to fill out a form. You have to follow a procedure that's instantiated in a form. You have to provide information, the form providing the guidance, before you can get access to whatever action or activity or procedure or process that you want the court to assist, defend, or whatever. So an increasing number of courts are at least now putting their forms on the web, and they've been doing this for years actually, usually in PDF sort of format. And let's open up this one. I've got a domestic violence order of protection form here. We'll blow this up just a little bit because I want you to point out some things. And as simple as this might be, although it's not a simple thing, you'll see that it's basically a, what, 1, 2, 3, scrolling all the way to down. And there's 4 pages of information. But you'll notice, though, that there's more here than just a form, right? Here's questions saying, well, what's your name and other stuff. But there's also all sorts of what I would call meta information, instruction. skip this if you have a lawyer. If you want your address to be private, give a mailing address instead. Your lawyer's name, if you have one. All sorts of things that don't have anything to do with the mere provision of information, but that aren't legal advice, but that are what I would call meta information that the court needs or that they want you to have, because in the situations where you are representing yourself or where people represent themselves, otherwise known as pro ses, the courts have found that people, actually make mistakes. It's an unfamiliar situation for them. They're not lawyers. And so if they show up with the wrong information, incomplete information, don't know how to answer the question sort of information, it just slows everything down. It becomes incredibly frustrating, and it's a huge problem. I'm looking for my thing here. So the other way that this problem is being solved is an increasing number of courts are allowing for the filling out of forms on the web. Makes sort of sense, right? This is an example of a form rendered in HotDocs. HotDocs is a LexisNexis product. And as you can see, it has a lot of the same elements in the sense that there's places to type in your information. There is at least the potential for, maybe this screen doesn't show that, the potential for meta information or explanations or things like that. There's an outline view that's sort of on the left. This is not the exact same form that I've shown you before, so I can't give you an exact comparison here. But this is actually for someone who is unfamiliar with the web or who wants more information. This is not a super friendly sort of format for that. You have to have a minimal amount of sort of, let's say, digital literacy to confront and deal with forms even in this format. What you want maybe is something that's more like TurboTax. So here's a screenshot out of TurboTax, and you'll notice the way TurboTax handles it is there's a whole outline of things. This is literally just one question plucked out of TurboTax, and it has a yes/no answer with all sorts of click to expands for help desk for help information and stuff like that. And so TurboTax has sort of become a way to think about how to deal with long, complicated forms, right? You ask literally one question at a time. You give sort of information of how you're doing as you're going along. And at the end, it produces forms that look exactly like the paper ones that would need to be submitted or something like that. Well, take all that information, and back in 2000, Chicago Kent and the Institute of Design at Illinois Institute of Technology got together and basically did a study that was unlike any other study that had been done in its time. They visited courts. They watched how pro ses dealt with the courts. They watched how the courts dealt with pro ses, and they came up with a fairly giant book of ideas and reactions to how the whole process of dealing with the courts for pro ses could be done. All right, and out of that book of dozens and dozens of ideas, one of them was the idea to create a simple authoring or a simple authoring system whereby people could create guided interviews. Think of it as ways to walk through forms. And this was the prototype that they built. This was built from scratch using JavaScript programmers and designers and things like that. But the problem with this was, I'll tab back to the California thing, is that this is just one form. This is a prototype for a joint simplified dissolution marriage, the simplest type of divorce you could get in Illinois. But here, if you go back to the California things, first of all, there's literally looks like about 3 or 4 dozen sections of forms, and each one of those contains dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of different forms. And I'll point out some other things about this. I'll blow this up so you can see it. You'll see that it has a little description. It has a date revised. This is a huge issue. The forms, once posted, are not completely, they don't stay the same. The law changes, the policies, the procedures change, and so then the form has to change. And so if you had a computer program that you hired programmers to sit with subject matter experts and work with, well, then you'd have to bring those programmers back every time the form changed, every time the law changed or something like that. And that could be ridiculously expensive, or actually it's a problem of scale, right? Because back here I'm showing you California, there are 50 states. And then on top of that, in many states, there are different forms for every county or for different jurisdictions. So the problem is actually huge. How do you maintain an online version of thousands and thousands of forms? How do you create a scalable system by which thousands and thousands of forms can be made available to pro se? Well, that's the scope of the problem that we thought we would take a stab at. And A2J Author is an attempt at that solution. So let me jump over right to A2J Author and give you a demo so that you can give it. And then I'll back up a little bit on some other things. So here I'm in a piece of software that's called A2J Author. What I've done is I've opened up a sample intake interview. Actually, let's do this. Let's open up the sample fee waiver. All right. And blow this up a little bit there. No, 60%. All right. So first let me show it to you the way the pro se would see it. And I'm just going to hit preview. And so the pro se sees basically a path that leads up to justice, which is actually the courthouse in this case. This is a sample interview for new authors, and so it has some notes built into it for new authors. These would be things that real pro ses wouldn't see when this was completed. All right, but it's interesting. We're using the tool itself to teach the authors how to do some of the authoring with this sample kit. So here's the welcome to the interview. Please click continue. So the first thing you notice is there's as little clutter as possible on the screen. This is what the designers came up with. You know, don't bug people with widgety things, Web 2.0 like things. You know, give them one thing at a time to fill out and walk them through, you know, in as unobtrusive and unthreatening way as possible. So the target audience for this is people that are unfamiliar with using the web, perhaps, or people who maybe English is not their first language, things like that. Because we wanted this to be able to reach down to people who is the typical demographic that can't afford a lawyer. All right, so I'll put my name in there. In this case, I'm going to pick my gender, and the reason why we ask for a gender right up front, you'll see in a second. I hit continue. All right, so now that's me. I'm represented as an avatar who's going to walk, not literally, but walk virtually up through this form as it gets filled out. So here we go. Hello, John. If you owe court fees or costs, you cannot afford to pay them, blah, blah, blah. It says you can get a fee waiver. And the little thought bubble here is, well, what's a fee waiver? So the form for a fee waiver likely does not have a little thing that says, what is a fee waiver? It might, you know, but an important point to make here is that A2J Author is not just for filling out the form. It's not just the information where there's blanks to be filled in. It's all about the meta information that's around it, which might include all the meta information up to the point where you start filling out the form. Meaning, are you filling out the right form? Are you in the right place? Do you have the information in the first place? Things like that. Turns out an awful lot of people come to this situation of trying to deal with a court problem, and they don't have the right information. They don't know where to go. They're in the wrong place. They ask for the wrong information. They use language that is not familiar to lawyers or the court personnel or things like that. This is not one bit surprising, but it's exactly the type of thing that slows down their access to justice, and it's exactly the type of thing that authors of these guided interviews using A2J can do to make the process easier. In other words, they can include meta information. So when we design this, our target audience for this software are lawyers, legal aid attorneys, and specifically we were thinking legal aid attorneys who have already dealt with people who've had trouble with these types of problems. So in other words, they have lots of experience of the types of problems that people have when filling out or dealing with certain types of legal situations. Right? So the goal is that they would use that expertise and build it in, capture it inside these guided interviews. Again, not providing legal advice, but rather providing, guidance and meta information. That's the equivalent of, are you sure you're in the right place? Do you have this information so that we can continue asking the questions and branching based on whether the person has or doesn't have that information? So if I click on Learn More here, I see it has a little explanation. When you're involved in a court case, there are usually fees and costs you need to pay. For some people who do not have enough money, the court will say they don't have to pay. This is called a fee waiver. Wonderful. Good. Go ahead, continue. So first thing, in most cases you have to pay a fee, but in some cases like requests for domestic violence, restraining order, you do not have to pay. Continue to learn how you can find out. All right. So if you're sure you owe fees, look at the fee schedule, click here. So remember, this is a sample interview, and notice that it has a click here, insert hyperlink. The idea is that the people who write these guided interviews are not going to recreate all the information or even copy and paste all the information that's already available on websites out on the web. Let me jump over to Firefox here and go to the Illinois Legal Aid website, for instance. So this is a website that's created by the 3 legal aid organizations in Illinois, and it has thousands of articles and other things that are of interest to people who might want to represent themselves or have a legal problem. Or I should say, it already has all that information. And so if I'm writing a guided interview, an A2J interview, that's going to walk somebody through a domestic violence protective order, I'm not going to include long chunks of text. I'm rather going to link to it because it already exists out on the web. All right? So we knew we were designing this into that, and that's why there's the ability to click and link out to those things. All right. Continue and go on to the next one. John, not everyone qualifies for a fee waiver. Do you in good faith wish to ask the court to waive your court fees? Do I qualify? Learn more. So here's the deal, right? The form is going to basically ask you for information. How much do you make, or is your income sufficiently low, or are you in a particular situation such that a fee waiver is merited? Well, here we can ask that one sort of question at a time, and if the answer is no, you can be given an explanation as to why. So the meta information is not just about, are you in the right place, do you have the right information, give me that information, but also you don't qualify, or this won't work for you, or this form won't work for you, and why. It does provide a little bit more information than you would get from just a form. All right, so here's like an explanation of the situations where you might be qualified for a fee waiver. I'm going to say in good faith, yes. If I click no, it's basically going to say, well, John, you do not qualify for a fee waiver, as you stated that you can afford, Now, it does give me the chance to go back and say, well, actually, I do want to get the money if I possibly can, so I'm going to say yes. And here's all the here's the problem, or here's the next step in this. It's like, okay, so are you receiving public assistance? Well, at this point, I'm gonna jump out to the and show you how some of the things that are happening behind the scenes. Let's go to edit this. All right. And in this interface, I can see the entirety of the form here. Here, we'll hit fit. This is the entire form. Each one of these little tiny boxes, and it's a little hard to see them, even in this format. Each one of these boxes is another screen. And so for something as simple as a simple fee waiver, you could see there's an awful lot of steps to go through that that will determine if somebody is eligible, and an awful lot of meta information that the author of this guided interview provided. All right? I think that's a good thing. Let's zoom back out. I'm going to narrow this down to do you qualify? No, what I want to do is I wanted to show you something, but I wanted to show you from another example. All right, I'm going to go to the sample intake interview. All right, so this is a guided interview that that would walk a person through applying for legal aid. All right, so it doesn't actually result in the filling out of a form. It results in the application to be represented by a legal aid organization. All right. If I show you all the steps, as you can see, there's an awful lot of steps because you have to ask all sorts of information about income. You have to be poor enough to qualify for legal aid. And you have to have the right type of problem in order for legal aid to help you. Let me go to the legal problem here and show you. And begin the interview. Okay. First of all, you have to be a citizen of the United States in order to get legal aid, except in the special situation where you're the victim of domestic violence. So that's actually a complex sort of set of things. You know, how am I mean, even before we're talking about whether I've got money or something like that, you know, I'm looking for the right citizenship. I think I want this guy. No, I don't. See, I had it keyed up to go, and I changed my mind while I was giving the presentation to go someplace else, and I should have done that. All right. Well, I'll just use this as an example. So here's a question: do you need help with a criminal or traffic ticket charge? And I'm going to preview this. This is what it looks like inside the interview. Do you need help with a criminal or traffic charge? Now, if we were in a room together, I would say, why do you think this question even has to be asked? And I have some smart people online, I see. So one of you would say, well, legal aid can't help you with criminal situation, right? Criminal, if you need representation for a criminal matter, well, that's the public defender's office. Legal aid only helps with civil matters. Furthermore, legal aid doesn't handle traffic tickets as well. Now, if that isn't clear, your state legal aid cannot help with traffic tickets, but if you need to get your driver's license, click no. But if you need help to get your driver's license, click no. So it turns out there's even sort of a slight division of things there. All right? So if I say yes, this will blow me out of this interview. If I say no, then it goes to the next page where it says, how old are you? It turns out that if I say, you know, too young, I continue. I think I got a bug in the software. Yes, I do, but that doesn't stop me from being able to show you the script. Sorry, what's going on here? Let's hit advance. Right. Well, that's interesting. It's looking for a client age under 60. I thought this was going to say something different here. Anyhow, but this is going to let me illustrate one of the features of A2J Author. Basically, you can build into it conditional logic that will branch based on input from the client. So in this case, for instance, let's say I wanted to add a thing that basically said if the client age is less than I don't know, let's say less than 18. You know, what I could do is create an action that basically jumps them to another screen which says, well, you know, we can't help you unless you're over 18, you know, or under 18 and accompanied by, you know, a parent or a guardian or something like that. All right, I'm not going to try to code that right here and now, but the point being that the software lets the legal aid lawyer or the legal aid attorney do the coding for the branching that decides whether or not to display information or how to take people down different paths. All right? And I'm going to get stuck on this page. I'm going to skip this. There we are, preview. Deadline of the problem. All right, good. I keep on ending at the same place. All right, well, I think I made my point about the capability of the branching there. All right. So the way this works is the software was written by CALI by Sam actually, Sam Goshorn. We used a lot of the same ideas behind CALI Author for writing lessons for developing this. And it's basically free for legal aid and for court assistants, courts that run court assistants or court help desks. They, in turn, collect all of their forms that they write in one place called the National, I always can never remember this, and Kate's probably saying, Don, can't you remember this? It's the Automated Documents Online, the Impado server. And the reason for that is that the Impado server is the back end of A2J Author. It's a hot doc server that takes the information from the forms and then compiles it into actual Word documents or PDF files that get sent back to the user so that they can print them out and then submit them to the court. All right. Now, law schools might use this information in a different way, or courts might use this information in a different way, because the information coming out of A2J is essentially an XML file. Tab over to.
Hey, John.
Yes.
I have a question from the audience.
Sure.
Is this all JavaScript running in a browser?
No,
right.
A2J Author is itself written in a combination of Visual Basic and Flash, and then the output is a Flash program that, well, it runs as a Flash program inside a browser. So yes, it runs in a browser. No, it's not JavaScript.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So A2J Author generates XML. This is a sample XML file that I grabbed. The reason why that's important is because XML can be transformed into other formats so that it can be consumed by databases or court docketing systems or e-filing systems. We were thinking ahead when we thought about that. And for that matter, even systems like criminal defense, public defenders, or administrative agencies, because those are some ideas that we're thinking about for how A2J Author could be used. It's not absolutely specific to just legal situations or the creation of legal forms. It could be used for any sort of information gathering and then dumping or relaying into a database. And so those are some of the things that we're exploring. Now, why is this interesting for law schools? Well, a couple of ways, and then I'll wrap this up. Chicago-Kent right now has a public interest certificate, and the students who earn their public interest certificate are working with the local legal aid organization, Illinois Legal Aid, ILAO actually is their name, to help them write guided interviews using A2J Author. So the students are doing the authoring, and it turns out that in order to author a guided interview, you have to know a lot about the area, about the law. So you end up learning, by being a lawyer. See one, do one, teach one, I guess. This is something that other law schools can do. Columbia's got a program. I know Conrad Johnson, who's on my board of directors, is running some students as part of his clinic who are creating guided interviews for local court system as well. The other thing that law schools could do is they could either work with their court help desks, or they could, or their clinics could work with the local legal aid, the statewide legal aid, to help them to have students create these forms. And I think that would be an awesome thing if we could figure out a way for that to become more prevalent. So let me give you as a wrap up. So how many people are using this, and is it really any good? What am I looking for? I'm looking for my there it is. And here's some Untitled statistics for that include A2J information. I'll blow this up so you can really see this. So as of 5/1/09, as you can see, there was a total of 3,000 active templates and 1,200 A2J modules. Impado has both A2J forms and hot docs forms on it. Every A2J form has to have a hot docs form for the final form to be created. This is the numbers of interviews and assemblies that have resulted. The total number, actually, the 2008 number is the best year, most complete year comparison here. 171,000 A2J and hot docs interviews occurred, and 111,000 times that resulted in the creation of a form. These numbers are huge. I mean, they're not as huge as they could possibly be, but this is fantastic that these people likely could not have gotten assistance, or rather than waiting in line or needing to deal with a live body, they were able to get assistance or get forms filled out on their respective statewide websites using this software and using this system. This is a good thing. This is what the graph looks like for that. So we're very much hopeful that this is going to become something that will become valuable, and that will grow in time. Here's some of the states. This is a slide I stole from Ron Stout when he did a recent presentation on this. It's being used by an increasing number of states, as well as court help desks, as well as now legal aid organizations using it for intakes. And we've had very productive conversations with the federal district courts who are looking to use this as a way to handle pro se e-filing, as well as a few interactions with court systems outside of the United States. So I'm a little bit over my time. I could certainly talk for another half hour, but I promise that I will not. And I'll just end there and say if there's any questions, I'll take them. But if you have questions, you can go to A2JAuthor.org and download the starter kit and select Getting Started, or send me an email and I'll be happy to answer any questions about this.
I have another question from the audience, John. Can you go over real quick again how A2J works with Lexis Hot Docs? What's the connection there?
Sure. Well, A2J Author is basically, you saw that it basically is collecting information, one screen at a time, asking you to fill in, asking for like names and numbers and things like that. And so that gets stored internally until you get to the end of the interview. When you get to the end of the interview, you hit submit, and it sends the XML file in a hot docs format to the Impado server. The Impado server takes the information, marries it with the hot docs form, in other words, does the actual form generation, and then sends it back to you either as a PDF or as an RTF file, so you can open it up and print it, or open it up and save it, on a thumb drive or something like that. All right. Now, if you don't have a hot docs server to send it to, then you have to have some other kind of service, software service, that will consume that XML file and do something with it. All right. Now, just because A2J speaks hotdocs XML is not that big of a problem because XML can be transformed into any number of different formats. And I've worked with a couple of legal aid folks who are transforming that XML into different XML so that it can be consumed by their case management system, for instance. And I'm working with courts as well to turn it into the NEAM or the GJXE format. Those are acronyms for how courts are doing e-filing systems, so that their case docketing system can consume the information coming out of A2J.
All right, well, we are a bit over time, so if you have any more questions, you can email John. John, do you have anything else to add?
No, other than, well, yes. I know there's an awful lot of information here, and it can be awfully complicated. So one of our goals is to make this easier to drop into use cases or situations that you might find this useful for. If I gave you some ideas, if you were thinking, gee, this could be used in, I'd appreciate if you would contact me and let me know what those ideas are, because we're struggling with how best to take this, to its next steps. And so we'd love to have some feedback.
Yes, definitely. Okay.
All right.
Are we done?
We're done.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.